Welcome back to the Woodworking Talk Show. Hey, you know what's better than listening to podcasts with people just yammering on about woodworking? Actually making something out of wood. And to help you get off the couch and into a workshop, I've developed a step-by-step system that'll have you building your first actual factual project that you'll be super proud of this weekend. Simply put, it's the most effective method of learning woodworking available anywhere, no experience necessary. Join the thousands of people who have started a lifelong hobby of woodworking by heading over to weekendwoodworkercourse.com and get started today. I'm pleased to have Cam Anderson join me again on the podcast so we can dive a little deeper into the world of epoxy, big slabs, and the insane growth of his YouTube channel, Blacktail Studio. I've been posting videos on YouTube since 2008 and pretty actively keeping up with all the other makers, DIYers, and woodworkers. And I can assure you, there are very few channels that have ever grown quite like Blacktail Studio. So let's look at some of the numbers here. Like a lot of channels in the makerspace, Cam's channel exploded in early 2020. What was going on back then? He gained 83,000 new subscribers in June alone of 2020. But the difference here is that his channel continues to grow a year and a half later, gaining, get this, 130,000 new subscribers in just the past month. And if sub counts don't impress you, his view counts will. 15 million views in the past 30 days. His videos regularly rack up over 1 million views each. His channel overall has over 150 million views. To put this into perspective, my channel, 14-year-old channel, has 270 million views. In about 18 months, Blacktail Studio has over half of my 14-year total. Whether you love it or hate it, personally, I'm a big fan. You simply can't ignore Blacktail Studio, the hottest maker channel on YouTube at the moment. So let's get into this. Hey, Cam, welcome back to the show.
I appreciate it. That's quite an intro. Thanks for running all those numbers.
You're welcome. I love looking at those. It's mind-boggling to look at that. So you know what I want to start off with here? I want to read you a review on Apple Podcast from the first time you were on my show.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, then I haven't seen this.
Okay, so not a lot of people leave reviews on there. So, okay, here's the title of the review. Love the show. Should be called the YouTuber Woodworking Show. Are you sensing a little passive aggression?
Sure.
This is by RJ Hammy. Okay. Saying that Cam is the, quote, king of big epoxy tables, unquote, was, all caps, insulting and an absolute joke. Black Forest, Jeff Mack, The Right Edge, Nature's Beauty, Woodworking, Timberwolf Slabs, Woodworks by Jared, Live Edge Lust, Rivka Wilkins Art, and about 200 other woodworkers are better than Cam with epoxy, and as craftsmen, they can actually make a living as craftsmen and don't need YouTube videos to glorify themselves.
Yeah.
Epoxy tables are the lava lamps of the furniture. Cannot wait for them to go out of style. Most of the other interviews are great. I just love that end of that. It's like, I hate everything about this, but okay, I just don't like this one guy, even though I don't.
Sure.
But so what's going on here? Why do your videos generate such an emotional response among people?
Well, first, to that guy's point, to be very clear, I've never called myself the king of anything.
Now, I made that comment. Yeah. That was me, and you are. There's no denying. People making epoxy right now, there is nobody who has a bigger audience than you.
In the audience-wise, debatable. But like Black Forest, I mean, they crank out, I have no idea, probably 20 tables a month, maybe more. And I do probably not 20 a year. So and they do bigger tables, they have bigger infrastructure. So I do think there's a fair amount of truth to saying that, because I do individual projects, one at a time, and all that. But I think what if you take everything about epoxy and all the hate and everything, what it comes down to is they don't like the style, and being a woodworker themselves, potentially, they don't like it infiltrating their feed, and they're just sick of it. And so I think all the things they'll say about it poisoning us and it's horrible for this and all the reasons they don't like it, I think it comes down to that they think it's ugly, and that's okay,
But it's got to be just such a small amount of people that are just really passionate about it. I mean, are they just hate watching? Is it because the numbers don't add up? If this many people claim to hate what you're doing and you're getting 1 million views on videos, there's plenty of people who just love watching what you do.
So at the end of my YouTube videos and also on my Instagram stories, I will post my replies to people that leave angry comments. And people are so far and away positive that I only post the negative one, so people think that's all I get. But I'll go through and I'll answer, as many questions as I can in about 30 minutes, twice a day. And at the end of that, if I haven't got to a negative one that I can make a funny comment about, I'll scroll, because it's hard for me to find these negative comments. So they're really not as common as I make them look. So I just keep scrolling until I can find a negative one, because vast majority of people are super nice, super positive about things.
So I guess the question then really should have been, why are people so passionate about epoxy tables and working with the big slabs in the work you're doing?
In a positive way?
In a positive way, yeah.
I think that it looks, and I don't think incorrectly, like something anybody can do. I think other aspects of making, if you watch some awesome welder English wheel some form and shape it and do this, it's really entertaining, but it's nothing I could do in the next couple of years of practicing, whereas epoxy, you can learn it relatively quick.
So I think you've combined the epoxy, which seems to be its own entity in the woodworking world. It reminds me a lot of CNCs a few years back when they first came out. There was a lot of controversy about it. But you combining that with using these massive big slabs too, which also seems to have a bit of controversy involved. And I noticed that a lot of the, I think, misconceptions people have revolve around those large pieces of wood. So let's dispel some of those myths. What are the most common myths you hear about these big slabs that you use?
I get a lot of people that are upset that we're clear cutting these forests, and my understanding is that black walnut is not a native tree. It was brought by settlers and continued to be planted as long as people have been on the western United States. So all these are urban, trees. They're not from the old growth, they're not from the frontier. And so people think that we're going through and clear cutting the redwoods. And generally, almost all the trees that get cut down by my supplier, which I don't have any say in that, obviously, are dead or dying. They only live, I think, about 100 to 150 years on the West Coast. It's too wet for them. Other parts of the country, they can live longer. And so they're salvaged. They used to burn this wood, not that long ago, and now able to turn it into furniture.
It's kind of important to clear a lot of that out of these forests too. If you've ever walked through a redwood forest, which I live right near very huge redwood forests, and there's a lot of trees that are just down, and some of them have been down for years, and without clearing that out periodically, it can lead to all sorts of problems.
I actually have a big redwood slab from a company down in California that, first of all, you can't cut the 400-year-old, 800-year-old trees anymore. It's illegal. And so these ones that have been laying dead for 50 to 100 years, they come through and salvage them. So I have a project with one of those slabs coming up that I'm really curious to see the comments that one elicits.
Is it just this massive size?
It's just this huge, odd-shaped, kind of cookie, crazy figured, and it's about, 8 feet by 9 feet at the kind of the points, and I think I'll just title it something like Old Growth Redwood. Just see what people say.
You're just pushing those buttons, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll explain it in the video, but people still won't hear.
I think that kind of there's a wide opinion about woodworking in general and about lumber that, and you get this when, like save a tree, don't use paper or something like that. When in fact, the lumber that we use in most building and construction projects it's basically farmed. They come from forests because it's a lot easier to farm these trees, cut them down. They're going to be straight. You're going to be able to get the best ones you can, rather than having to pick and choose in all the labor that would go into going into a forest to get these things. So I think that if you really, if you want to see more trees, you really need to start using more wood products. It's the most sustainable building product there is.
I have a degree in fish and wildlife in the College of Forestry at Oregon State, which is pretty big in the timber world. And we did projects with Starker's, a big timber farm, if you want to call it that, in Western Oregon. And we went and talked to them, and they're on a 70-year rotation, which seems crazy because, a regular grass seed farm like we have around here, is on a 1-year rotation. Right. Or maybe they do alternate fields, but Penn and Teller in their show, they said...
and bullshit, yeah. They addressed this.
Yeah, they go, like a potato farmer plants more potatoes if you buy more potatoes. So it goes, just like you said, if you want more trees, use more paper and they'll plant more trees.
Right. People don't feel this sense of anguish when you pick a tomato or something. Yeah. We're not hugging these tomato plants.
The softwoods, these fir trees, like the lumber trees, they grow quick. Right. On an ecological scale, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think there's any woodworker that supports clear cutting or what might be going on down in the Amazon in South America, where it's devastating, and it's just definitely not good for. It's not good for the local economies. It's not good for the environment or any of that. But that's a big difference. People need to make that distinction.
Yeah, that wood will never be around anymore pretty soon. Whereas, if we did it sustainably. Even if it's expensive, for forever, we can still have it forever.
And wow, there is a lot of downed trees you can see in redwood forests that have been there for years. And so it's certainly, not a surprise that you can get these big slabs from those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was watching your latest video where you were filling in another big slab with epoxy. And it was like a race against time there because you were having some troubles with that, weren't you? It was like leaking.
Which I have. Was it the round one?
I think it was the round one. Was it? It seemed like you were. I think it was $65,000 hobby. Was that the one where it looked like you were having some troubles with the form?
Yeah. I forgot that I even had that in that video, but yeah, it was. People. I teach this, I have like a online workshop, and I do have hosted in-person workshops and all this. And so people think because you're a teacher, you're supposed to have everything figured out. And I'm like, the reason I know how to do all this stuff is because I've tried all the bad ways. And so this was a kind of a unique project that I had to be really creative on the form, and it worked in the end, but my floor got a little bit of epoxy protection on it now.
Yeah. So what's the time frame on, okay, let's use that as an example. Let's say you have that slab. How thick is that slab of wood? Maybe like...
That round one was
4 inches?
Pretty thick, around 3 inches.
3 or 4 inches. Okay, so you got that. It's maybe, God, that thing looked huge, maybe 8 feet wide diameter, something like that.
Oh, I think it might have been a different one than I'm thinking of. The round one was only about 55 inches.
Okay.
I have in the shop, I did have a little over 9 foot slab that I poured.
So let's say you've got a 5 foot diameter slab or so, 3 inches thick. How long does it take to do the whole process of just the top, not even including putting legs on it or anything like that, just to prepare the top with filling it with, I assume you got to do like multiple layers of epoxy, right? And then
you can pour up to about 2 inches, sometimes up to 2.5 inches in one pour now with this new deep pour epoxy. It's not like the old days of our boat epoxy, where you go 1/8 of an inch at a time. This one I did in a couple layers, and if you some people don't know is the thicker you pour epoxy, the faster it cures because it creates heat as it goes. Oh, by the way, we're dog sitting a dog here, so she's going to make some appearances.
Oh, great.
the thicker you pour, the faster it cures because it'll generate more heat. But even still, I usually say, I never add the hours up, but I usually say, a table takes me about 60 hours, but then there's 2 or 3 weeks of letting it cure completely in the middle of that.
So you need a lot of space just to keep that busy while you've got other projects going on too.
And that's kind of the problem, is it's hard to do a lot of projects at once, and that's where guys like your fan mentioned Black Forest. If you have rooms dedicated just to curing, you can have a lot of things going. Where I'm kind of limited in my small shop to a couple tables at a time at the most.
Right. And so are you taking on, these are all commissioned jobs that you do?
So over the last couple of years, yes, they've been mostly all commissioned. Up to recently, is I'm trying to stay ahead of this, doing my best to stay ahead of like the YouTube peak or the plateau.
Right.
And I assume at some point people are going to be sick of watching me make a black walnut, black epoxy dining table for some rich guy. So the problem is people only order what they've seen you make. And so I actually have a couple projects in the shop now, and some are epoxy, some aren't, but I'm doing some projects just of cool things I want to make. And I think my idea right now is just to auction them off on eBay and see what happens.
Oh, really?
One of them actually we're going to auction it off for Make-A-Wish, and that's going to be probably my next video. And that's not an epoxy one, but yeah, I mean, as your fan mentioned, I do have income supplemented from YouTube, so if the table flops, I think it'll make a good video. If if my commission table sold for $20,000 and this one sells for $1,200, I think people will think it's funny. So,
well, you'll be surprised, because when I've auctioned off items for Make-A-Wish also, which
really?
I think is a great organization. Yeah, for years I was auctioning off a lot of my projects I made, and you'll be surprised, people will pay a lot more for a project that's being that goes to charity like that than they will retail. So yeah,
well, I hope so. And so for me, it enables me to make some different projects that are a little bit more interesting than what I've done in the past, than my commissioned work. But I kept saying that I was going to stop taking orders and stop taking commissions, but as of right now, and I might change my mind, is part of my page is showing people how to have a small woodworking shop and how to make some money on the side or even full time. And I feel if I stopped doing that, then I would lose some of that credibility and what it's like to be actually doing that.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that. You've got your new epoxy course, the virtual epoxy studio, right? Mm-hmm. How's the sales on that? How's that doing?
Sales are doing good, but we still haven't. My wife's in marketing for her family's business. I mean, she's in everything for her family's business, but one of the things she's really good at is marketing, but we haven't marketed it at all. So I have a huge email list from that I've acquired through my website. I'm ready to go, but we haven't done anything. So I'm hoping we can really push that a lot more once we learn how to, send it out to the rest of the world.
Yeah, getting that email list is huge. It's surprising how a lot of us don't think email is that important anymore, but it is the most important way for selling things.
And I need to give you the credit for this, because it was our last chat when you were talking about how you've kind of been able to diversify from sponsors and things like that through your weekend woodworker course. So I don't know if you've looked at the website for mine, but it's eerily close to yours.
Was it?
Yeah. When I was doing the layout, by the way, my wife's a big fan of yours, and I was talking, I'm like, I'm not sure how to do this. She goes, well, how'd Steve do his? And I'm like, good point. Let me see.
It's copy and paste, man.
Pretty close.
That's great. It's been really real successful. I think that I'm happy because, and you'll feel the same way, is when you start making these kind of sales, because you feel good about them because it's a good product.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm really proud of. I actually, instead of filming it myself, I hired a actual video producer to do this, and it was a lot of work, as I'm sure you know. But I don't think there's been one complaint in all the comments, and we're still engaging, and I answer people's questions on there. I've got some great reviews, so it feels good to have something that people really like.
That's fantastic. What do you get with that? You get like, is it a step-by-step, you do one project, another project, and you're learning along the way? And how many videos
So it's very similar to how my in-person workshops were. We basically build the table live throughout the course, and it's broken down into like, I think 30 chapters from 2 minutes to 12 minutes or so. And so we start at the wood, my wood supplier, and we interview him, and throughout this, we have sections where I went live on Instagram and got live Q&A to kind of mimic the people in the class that are thinking of things that I'm not thinking of. Right. And so you get a lot of these questions that I think are really, really helpful, of things that I wouldn't have thought of. Maybe I've just kind of forgot them over the years. And we buy the wood, we take it home, we build a form, we cut the wood to shape, we seal the edges, we talk about pros and cons to all these different aspects of building the epoxy table. And then we just build it start to finish and show every step. And I do a couple different variations, a couple different versions of them, like a powdered pigment one, and explain liquid dyes versus this and that. So I think it's a lot more encompassing than my in-person workshop, because I had the time to, spend weeks filming this and get everything I wanted in there.
Okay, I asked John Malecki this because he does a lot of epoxy. I'll ask you the same question. What's the biggest mistake people make with epoxy? Beginning people. My first pour, I made all the mistakes. And I didn't know there was a difference between like a deep pour epoxy and like a boat epoxy, for sealing an edge. And so I had only taped the bottom of mine. So first off, all the epoxy leaked out. And then I somehow got it stopped and filled it up. And then it overheated and started smoking and cracking. I thought it was going to catch on fire. Oh, wow. Can it catch on fire?
I've never seen it catch on fire. I don't want to say it can't, because then somebody will catch something on fire. But
right.
It's smoked and got really hot.
My only experience has been in those little syringe epoxies, to glue things together. And I remember mixing that up one time on something that wasn't compatible with it. It was just generating a lot of heat and melting.
Yeah. Another one is not mixing thoroughly enough. It'll stay gummy basically forever if you don't get it mixed. So leaking epoxy molds, staining wood is another one I did on that first pour. If you use a liquid dye, just like any woodworking dye, can soak into your wood, stain the wood.
So if I came up and up to your shop, you could teach me how to pour in. How long would it take you to teach me how to do basic epoxy work if I was doing it in person with you?
A day.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's kind of the basis behind my in-person workshops and now this virtual one.
Right. And would you start me off with a table or something smaller?
I always tell people to start with a serving board. If I was teaching you one-on-one, we could do a table, like a coffee table is fine, or a desk. But if that's one of those mistakes that people make, is they say, well, I don't need a serving board, I need a dining table. So I'm going to start with the dining table. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, I know it's expensive materials, it's a lot of work, but you'll learn so much on that first project that you'll be glad you didn't, spend $800 on wood slabs that you, potentially waste.
How much does epoxy cost? The deep pour epoxy to pour, like, say, a dining table.
It obviously, varies on how wide and all that, but I would budget $400 to $1,000 in epoxy.
Right. And this probably also factors into, and I assume a lot of people who take your course also are interested in selling what they're making. And some of these things can command huge prices. I know you like to put the prices right on your thumbnails of your videos, which I think is probably very enticing to people to click on. But so if you sell something, say you've got one here, salvage slab to a $6,000 desk. I think what people do is they look at that and they think, $6,000 desk, why is that a $6,000 desk? But there's obviously a lot more to it than that, isn't there? I mean, you've got your time, the slab itself.
It is a lot of time, and probably more than people think. But I'm also, to put it bluntly, I'm able to charge more than some people, because I think people that watch my videos see every step that goes into the product, and they say, this is what's going to come out. And they feel pretty confident based on, dozens and dozens of videos that it's going to look something like that. Whereas if I could do that for a plumber, if I knew a plumber was going to go through every step, yeah, I'd probably pay him more than the next guy if I'm just choosing, random name. So it is, but it's something that I think most competent people can do with a little bit of practice.
Yeah. There's a market for everything too. I mean, obviously, if you didn't have somebody to pay those prices, you wouldn't sell them.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty simple supply and demand kind of thing, isn't it?
For sure.
Do you ever think that you're just going to run out of ways to pour epoxy on your YouTube channel? And you kind of alluded to that earlier, wondering if you were going to hit a peak at some point. Yeah. And do you think that you might start working into other things?
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely know that epoxy is a fad. I think there's going to be aspects that stick around for a long time. I think live edge probably stuck around longer than most of us expected when it first came out. It looked kind of like a fad, and now it's just a beautiful part of, the furniture industry. Right. So yeah, I'm just like anything, trying to diversify. I don't want to be only known for one thing, and then when that thing is no longer cool, then I haven't ever done something else. So I think I'll be doing some kind of furniture, continuing to do that. And I would like to do more without epoxy, just to show some different things. But yeah, it's a fad, and it's a lava lamp. And you know what? I would venture to say that the lava lamp gross sales were probably pretty good.
Yeah. Well, if somebody's got to do it, then why not it be you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I owe a ton of my success to that, and I'm hoping to be able to stretch that into other aspects.
Yeah. See, I was of the mindset when epoxy pours started coming out that it was a fad, and I'm not so sure anymore that it's just a fad. I think, like you said, there's still going to be parts of it that remain, and I think it's still going to be viable for years to come. I think that probably more of the extreme ends of it will kind of settle down a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's just going to be fit right into a woodworking world. And maybe that's part of the reason there's some opposition to it. You can't talk to anybody about epoxy, it seems like, without getting some sort of emotional reaction to it. And I think from woodworkers, it's probably a lot of that whole gatekeeping.
Yeah.
There's only one way.
It's one of the things that I find, I don't know, kind of sad, because there's some woodworkers that I really like on YouTube, and everybody's trying to get youth involved in it, wants to get this involved in it, but some of these guys that have really positive pages and great messages, they kind of are a little bit of like the bullies against the epoxy, and mm-hmm. I can take it. I have a good enough sized page and make enough money, but I worry that, maybe there's a 17-year-old kid that thinks it's cool, and now the guy he looked up to is making fun of him, and so now he's like, oh, I don't want to try something because I don't want to get made fun of, or I'm not a real woodworker or whatever. And I don't think people need to be a real woodworker by so-and-so's definition. I think it's a great way to get creativity out there, get new people involved, especially young people. If someone starts working with epoxy when they're 16, are they going to be making epoxy tables when they're 40? Probably not, but mm-hmm. that might have been what got them into woodworking and being a craftsman.
Yeah, the history of woodworking has always been about innovation and bringing other materials and techniques into it. There's always been people combining steel with woodworking or using different tools to produce woodworking projects. It's a constant evolution and growing and combining of all of these different things. It just seems like only recently that, I guess it's just the world at large, you have to pick a side on everything, isn't it?
I guess so. And I actually, as much as there's comments I get, I don't feel that way personally. I don't maybe I don't get as attacked as many people, or maybe I just separate myself from the people that feel the other way. So for the most part, everything's pretty positive in my world.
I think so. I think I could really come back to when CNCs came out. I think it's a lot of kind of the similar type of thing. There was a lot of reaction from traditional type woodworkers, and now it's all settled down. People use them. They found their spot. And I think epoxy is the same way. It's going to find its space.
You'll be able to remember the year that the swirling blue and pink epoxy table came out, but like you said, maybe there'll be a long-term home for it.
Yeah, I think so. Is there a part of making these projects that you most enjoy?
I don't know about it's fun creating something start to finish, but again, I've made a lot of these black walnut, black epoxy dining tables that they're getting a little repetitive for me, and so I really like working with really, really cool woods, and that's what I've been turning down a lot of commissions these days, and I kind of have a talk with my clients or potential clients, and I just tell them, like, look, I'm trying to find the most remarkable pieces of wood and just highlight that, and if it involves epoxy, that's fine, but I guess finding the coolest wood, and I'm pretty fortunate to be in an area where I can do that. And so getting something really, really unique, really cool, that's something I
How are you doing on, do you do all the other platforms, Instagram?
I do Instagram
TikTok?
pretty regularly. TikTok, I got a little bit of a brag here, is I've been on TikTok long enough that TikTok actually paid me to join TikTok when they first switched over from their old app.
Really?
Yep.
Your legacy.
I told somebody there was a different app company that was talking to me about a sponsorship, and I said, well, I don't want to brag too much, but I was actually one of these first creators that TikTok paid to come on, and I don't want to take all the credit, but the results are pretty obvious that TikTok has done well, and I don't want to say it was because of me, but
It was you. It was all you, kid.
But so that said, I don't do a lot of TikTok, and I recently did like a mini version of one of my YouTube videos on TikTok. It was like 2 minutes long, and I just did a voiceover of a start to finish, and it got like 5 million views or 4 million views, and I went from 20,000 to 50,000 followers. So I'm like, oh, I should do more of those. So
it's
I haven't done any more since then, but I really need to.
So I've been experimenting this past week. Because I've been making YouTube shorts for over a year now. So I thought I'm going to start. I've been talking to friends of mine in other genres, I guess, of making things. And they're all like, you should do reels on Instagram. And so I took those shorts. I did an experiment where I posted those on Instagram for 5 days. And the numbers went up like 300%. Everything in just 5 days. And so I thought, okay, at the same time, why don't I start? Because somebody had stolen my name and everything on TikTok, and there was a guy posting me and my picture and everything, and it took me forever to get this removed from TikTok. It took like months. Finally, they removed this thing. So I thought, well, I'll have my own TikTok there. Okay, so this was just this past week. 5 days ago, I had 3 followers on TikTok.
You just not started, huh?
Just got started, and so I posted a few of those shorts that I did, and now I have 12.1 thousand followers. And I haven't even mentioned this to anybody on my channels or anything. It's just nice. Like, boom, that's how TikTok works. So right now, I'm just kind of figuring out how do I leverage this, in a way.
Sure. What's your opinion, and I don't mean to play the host here, but what's your opinion on let's say a woodworker is trying to build his brand and he's having a ton of success on TikTok or a ton of success on Instagram and maybe not YouTube or YouTube and not TikTok. Do you think people need to follow the followers or something else?
Well, I think it makes sense to go on YouTube because it's really the only platform you can make money off of. But I also think it depends upon what your goals are. My goals used to be, ad revenue on YouTube, sponsorship deals, until I came up with my own product. And now it's sort of shifted to where I see YouTube as just one component. And that's why I'm looking at TikTok and Instagram as the same way. They're basically promotional tools. as much as I can
Yeah.
to sell courses, and it seems to be a pretty good balance there. I think you'll find the same thing as soon as you start to
Sure.
promote yours a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Because I know at least TikTok early on, it was very easy for people to get subscribers or followers on there, and I'm convinced that they're gonna get caught or dinged for doing the like fake followers eventually. Because it helps build a platform when more people are.
Right.
It's exciting when you start getting more followers, and my page wasn't big. I wasn't doing anything to get thousands of followers. Where on Instagram, I'd work my tail off and you'd barely, creep up.
Right. Do you get there's a TikTok fund, I guess, that pays out for, I don't know how that works, but it's like, so I just saw this video Hank Green had a few days ago about how the difference between YouTube monetization and TikTok monetization is because YouTube sells ads against individual videos. Your video has an ad kind of on it or next to it or something. Whereas on Instagram, obviously they can't have an ad on every single one or it would just drive people away from the platform. So they just do it periodically. So the only thing they do is they set up a huge fund and then they just pay out individual creators, same way YouTube is doing with their Shorts fund. And I never realized that, but that's why they're doing that on YouTube, is because they can't put an ad on every single short.
Interesting, because I looked at my monetization on the few shorts that I've done, and my best short, which wasn't great, was 600,000, 700,000 views, and it made like $8.
Yeah, man, killing it on those shorts, huh? I know they pay out like once a month. You have to accept the payment. They'll say here's your bonus, and then you click through, and it's like after all the shorts, mine's usually around $100 or so.
Oh.
So I'm taking a vacation.
Perfect.
But again, I see those shorts as really just that one component, because right now those are super popular, and I think that it's important to kind of stay on top of these things, because then I can, if a fraction of those people, and they get crazy views, just a fraction of those people check out my other videos, and then a fraction of those people decide to click through to a course, then it was kind of worth it.
And talked about diversifying it earlier. I have found I really like the shorts for being more of a kind of a Steve Ramsey type of woodworking page, where I can get on there and talk about sanding techniques, whereas I can't make a full video because people want to see a big build or something come together. But if I have a little woodworking trick or a jig that I've made, they're not too upset with me. Some people still get upset, but they're not too annoyed if I just have a quick 40-second video on that.
Yeah. I find them real fun to make. I think it's just an interesting new challenge, to make a short video and try to convey a message in that limited time.
Sure.
Yeah. Why do you think most of the people watch your videos?
I don't know. It's
what explains 130,000 subscribers in the past month? That's crazy.
I think I'm good at asking for subscribers, first of all.
It's more than that.
I don't know. I used to think that I was a how-to page, and I think realizing that it's not what I am has helped. I think there's a lot of people in the world that do very digital jobs, and they're stressed out, and and I think at the end of the day, I get a lot of comments, people that tell me they just come and they zone out and they like watching something come together, and so I figure there's a lot of people out there like that, where there's only a medium amount of woodworkers. So
Right.
I just try to make entertaining content. I try to be as honest as I can. I've hid stuff in early videos because I was too embarrassed, to admit that I made a mistake. And now I realize that that's the best part of a video. If something goes really wrong, I don't even really get upset anymore. I'm like, well, it'll be a good, little hit in the video. So, just being honest with people and showing that you're a mere mortal, if you will.
It's fun to watch because those are the type of videos it's a sit-back experience for most people. You can literally, put it on your big screen TV if you want and watch your videos. And plus, you have a very soothing voice.
I've been trying to get my audio better. I used to when it was not even 6 months ago. I think I was still doing everything on my phone. So being able to actually have a good mic and learn to edit the sound a little bit.
Yeah. And I think you're right. It's not really how-to content, but you explain what you're doing along the way. And I think that's kind of the distinction there.
Sure. Yeah. The analogy I always come back to is, you don't have any intention of building a battleship when you watch how it's made, but you'll sit there for 30 minutes and go, wow, like that's how a battleship is made. Like, that's cool.
I used to watch American Chopper.
Yeah.
I've never even ridden a motorcycle in my life, but I used to love watching that because it was like, oh man, these guys are like bending steel and making a thing.
I watched it too, and I also don't ride motorcycles.
There's just something very satisfying about watching other people build things that you know that you probably will never do.
Yeah, no, it's and again, I kind of attribute most of the beauty, if you want to say that, of my tables to the wood. And so I think it's really fun, just like when it all comes together at the end and seeing like, oh wow, like this started out as a rough cut, scaly slab, and now it's really pretty.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to have more online courses, or are you just going to be focusing right now on this one course and making?
No, I mean, yes, I need to focus on this course, and I think there's a lot of potential in doing more courses. I think it's also the things that I can't do on YouTube because they're not engaging enough for 3 million people to watch a video. If you can get a few thousand people that really want to learn a skill or something. I have some other ideas for courses kicking around, and just want to make sure that I have the time to get everything into that course and make sure it's well done and not just rush to get it out.
Yeah, I don't know if YouTube is really the best place to teach things. I think it sort of has to be off-platform, like what you're doing. I think that makes the most sense if you really want to dive deep into a topic.
And that's one of the frequently asked questions of this course that I have is don't you give all the stuff away in the YouTube videos? And I try, but also it's all about engagement. And if I want to spend 3 minutes showing how the sanding pattern varies, if you look at it from the light this way, like that's boring, and all the people that are there just for entertainment are going to leave. And so this enabled me to actually show everything I want to show for as long as I wanted to show it.
Yeah, it's one of the things in my courses that I started using this real-time cam on certain shots because I thought it was important for beginning woodworkers to see things that aren't sped up. And so there's certain times when maybe a table saw cut, I'll put it in, it's a feature, a real-time shot of how long you can expect this cut to take. Because I think a lot of people are surprised to see sometimes things take a lot longer than you imagine they are when you see such high-speed footage and highly cut footage on YouTube. So those are the kind of things that, boy, you do that on YouTube, it'd be clicking away from that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's good to be able to take a process. And I've had people ask me similar question. It's like, well, man, you have years and years of content on YouTube. Well, can I just watch that? And yeah, you could. Absolutely. And you would probably, glean a lot of information from that, but it's pretty scattered. It's not really focused. Whereas if you just want to okay, where do I start? What do I need? And how do I get there? Then that would be
and I had that comment, one of the reviews of the workshop, that someone's like, I've been trying to piece everything together from your years of videos. And first of all, my techniques have changed. I use different finishes. And so, but he goes, thank you so much for having it all in one place, so they can just watch start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah. I should come up there and do an epoxy project with you because I've never done an epoxy project.
Anytime we can see how much controversy you can stir up.
Yeah, I like to do that. It's good for the channel.
Well, what would you build if you were going to build something out of epoxy?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think it would have to be a table. Really, it makes the most sense to have some sort of a table. But it wouldn't be a coffee table because I don't use coffee tables anymore. So
I know you said that you like to stir up controversy by putting like the Halloween masks behind you or Easter eggs. Just think what some bright epoxy would do back there.
That's what I could do. I could take my Halloween pentagram I made and
Yep.
Pour some epoxy on it.
Perfect.
Yeah. What happens if you don't use a hairdryer or blow heat gun? I guess it's a heat gun, right? You use on epoxy.
You actually don't really need it on this deep pour stuff anymore.
Oh, really? So that was to eliminate bubbles, right?
Yeah, and yeah, when you pour it, the bubbles will come up. You can hit it with a torch or a heat gun, and they'll pop. But they take it stays liquid, and I mean really liquid for at least 12 hours. So they just come up and pop on their own.
That sounds like a lot easier product.
It's I was far from the first person to make epoxy tables, but I was one of the really early ones. So I was doing it with that marine epoxy layer by layer, where you had to keep torching it and keep pouring it. And when they got the deep pour epoxy, it was like having sound in movies for the first time. It was like, whoa, like what can we actually do with this now?
That was really smart of them to finally do that. They probably saw such a demand for people doing epoxy with it exploding everywhere.
And if you think of it from an epoxy company, traditionally you're selling little containers for little sealing, and now when you can sell gallons of it instead for a single project.
That's crazy. I think the first epoxy guy I saw was Peter Brown. You know Peter Brown does the wood turnings with epoxy. He was probably the first I remember seeing on YouTube. And he would just, dip odd things in epoxy, and then he would turn them. Real cool stuff. He's still doing that kind
I feel
of
like wood turners don't get enough credit for being on like the cutting edge of like cool stuff.
A lot of stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I did a table with brass pigment, like real brass metal, and epoxy, and a desk I made for my wife, and it's really a cool effect. It's actually cold, it's metal. And I learned that the wood turners have been doing this for years, making like CA glue with the brass to fill in little knot holes and things.
Do you have a lathe?
So yes, I don't know how to use it, but I have a little one.
See, I think that combined with the epoxy, that's a winner right there, because there's both. It falls into that category of satisfying videos.
And
the lathe turning.
I think subconsciously I'm saving my turning phase for when people stop liking my content, so I can start learning to turn, because I think it'd be fun. I think there's a guy in Southern Oregon, Tilden Woodturning. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He turns these sink vessels out of like big orchard root balls, and they're just these incredibly beautiful, mostly walnut root balls that he seals so they can just be used as like a bathroom sink. And I think that would be very satisfying to see one of those come from, an orchard all the way to a finished product.
Yeah. Wow. I think that even just a chunk of wood filled with epoxy and turned would be just beautiful. And it's definitely it's like watching a potter working on a potter's wheel. It is. There's no other way to describe it. It's just satisfying to watch it just kind of take shape.
And those are some of the most viral videos. If you sort YouTube woodworking videos by view rank, some of the top ones will 50 million, 80 million views will be these, just a guy turning something.
Just turning, right? Yeah. It's crazy, because it's one of those things in woodworking. There's like two kinds of woodworking that people really specialize in. One of them is wood turning, and the other is scroll saw work. People who do one of those, that's pretty much their focus of what they do.
Yeah, I do. I agree. I think that like wood turning is almost like becoming a metal worker. It's you have to have all the tools and all this training just for that one skill.
Right. And that's kind of the reason why I put my lathe in storage, because I had a lathe here. It was my dad's. It was like an antique lathe. It still worked fine, but it was taking up space, and I just wasn't using it often enough, because I think you just need to like focus on making turned projects with it rather than the occasional table leg, here and there.
The only thing I have a little, benchtop jet one. I would like to get confident enough to like build a chisel handle, if I need one, because I do want to do kind of tool restoration type projects. And I think it'd be nice to have the skills to at least be able to make something small and simple that I could replace.
Right. Oh, nice. Well, you got a lot of options there. Your workshop's looking pretty good. I think the last time we spoke, had you just moved into a new workshop, or you were?
When did we talk?
You were expanding. It's been a while. I think it's probably been 5 or 6 months, maybe.
Yeah. So in September, it was a year in my new shop. So we'd moved from kind of more suburban, regular garage to I have a detached shop now.
Oh, right, right.
And so I've been in a little over a year now, and it's I made it too small. I could have used only if there was a resource to teach me how to set up a shop the right way. I put too much stuff in it, and I don't want to take anything out, but also it's really hard to get around with big tables in there now. So it's pretty cozy.
How many projects can you work on at once there? You probably don't have room for more than just like one curing and then working on another one.
Kind of, yeah. One big one and then some medium ones. Like right now I have a lot for me. I have like 4 or something in there, but it's just one big one and then some medium ones.
Wow. Can you work on a project and create sawdust while one is curing, or do you run the risk of like sawdust getting into that epoxy?
No, what I learned is it's the stuff is so thick, and especially after 12 hours, but even in that first 12 hours, dust that settles on top is going to be in that top 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, and it gets planed off anyway.
Right.
So it doesn't really affect anything. And then once it's gelled, it doesn't matter. I mean, unless you drop a wrench into it, you'll be fine.
So do you have any overall huge plans for 2022? Oh, another thing I know you noticed you were doing was that you got that new kind of makerspace database you've been trying out. How's that going?
Good, actually, and thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, we have a new. I guess if anybody doesn't know, the backstory on that is in my YouTube videos, I go to this space that rents me time out that has a big planer and all these fancy tools. And in every video, someone's like, how do I find one near me? And here's how not quick I am, is that, I would say, I don't know, call around. And then I'd say,
Google? Ever heard of Google?
Yeah, and I'd like, I don't know. So I'm telling like, I don't know, maybe call a cabinet shop, maybe call a wood slab place and see if they know anybody. And finally, this like light goes off. I'm like, maybe there should be a website with all these places. So I did an informal one on my current website that's a really poorly executed, just down and dirty, like people upload their space and it's on there. I worked with a web team and actually developed a real website. Like they had to code everything and do it like a real website. And I haven't announced it yet, but let's get the ball rolling. I'll just put it out there now, and because I think we're through most of the bug testing, and it's makerbook.io.
I'm writing it down.
Perfect.
Okay.
And it's basically, we kind of ripped off Yelp. If you think of it like the layout is, right now it's woodworking, metal fab, and blacksmith. And so if you're like a guy, maybe a shop like mine, I don't know how full your shop is, but if you said like, I don't want to drive Uber, but I'll rent some shop time out, on the side. And so basically from small to huge shops, they can upload them to this database, and then people can search by proximity. And this is worldwide. We have actually a lot of international ones on the existing one. And so, yeah, it's just a spot where people can go find, maybe you just need a table saw cut, or maybe you need a 50-inch planer or a big CNC, and it's a place to list all those.
Well, that's fascinating, because I always think of makerspaces as being like these professionally, maintained places. But it sounds like what you're doing is kind of an Airbnb of makers, right? And you could basically put your garage on there if you've got the tools and say anybody who wants to.
And that's my idea. We have people can categorize their own shop by hobby shop, semi-professional, or professional, to hopefully let people know if like, look, I just need some plywood cut. Like I'll be fine in the hobby shop, or maybe I need a professional shop. And I think hopefully my idea is that it's a place where the individuals can make a little money, and maybe, hey, tell their wife, like, if I make $1,000 from renting out some shop time, I'll buy the next tool.
Right.
So I think it's a cool idea. I'm hoping it can open it up and maybe enable woodworking for no money, upfront costs in terms of, you don't need a garage or a shop.
Well, it's a great way to use just some downtime if you're not using it at the moment, to have somebody.
And I'm amazed at how much these industrial shops like renting their time out. I was talking to my wood supplier, and he wants to buy a new $150,000 planer, and he goes, if we did 6 hours on Friday or on Saturday and Sunday, that'll cover the whole payment of it, and they can basically have a free planer Monday through Friday. Wow. And so I thought that the big shops would be more, closed off and not want to let people in bring their projects in, but they see it as a way to basically pay for their tools.
Well, that's great. I would imagine then for individuals renting out their space, they would probably most likely need to check their homeowner's insurance first and make sure that that's covered.
Yeah, that's another thing we have it categorized by, whereas like a makerspace, where it's a space for you to go use tools, and that was somewhere where people definitely need to have their insurance figured out and liabilities. And then the other one is someone brings their project for you to use with your tools. So like they come to Steve's shop, you rip it on your table saw, hand it back to them.
So there's a lot of options there. Well, that's a really interesting idea. I hope that grows.
Yeah, I do too. And it's a small way to give back. And I don't, people keep asking me how are you going to make money on it. And I'm like, let's just get people using it. And, if it's a good idea, then we'll figure out the rest of it. But
oh, sure. Get us all hooked first.
It's not going to cost people. It'd be something like Airbnb where you could just book on the app or something like that eventually. But I don't even see that in the near future.
You're right. And you could run ads on there or something too.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of ways to monetize it. That's great. It's good to hear you have so much diversification on your business. Yeah, it's pretty important. Mm-hmm. I think last time we were here, we talked about your helicopter. You still don't have any desire to fly a helicopter anymore?
No, you hear how much I got going on? I don't have time for that. You know how dangerous I'd be in a helicopter right now?
I'm so done with that. That's great. Yeah. Well, Kim, I'm glad you could join me again, and we could talk through a little bit more of this epoxy stuff. And wow, congratulations on the success of your channel. It is just really on fire right now. And I think that anybody listening to this, if you haven't seen his channel, it's just over at Blacktail Studio, and get to watch lots and lots of epoxy and big slabs and Cam's soothing voice.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and thanks for listening to this episode of the fuck, I forgot the name of the show. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Woodworking Talk Show. I'll see you guys next time.